it going, everybody? Welcome to this week's episode of Perfect Reload Weekly, where we take a look back at the week in video game news. My name is Steve. I am joined always as Christian. Christian, I don't want to ask because we had a good week this week, but how you doing, man?
I don't like the fact that more people are paying attention to this urine-soaked nightmare. The last thing I need is people that I owe money to figuring out where I might be.
Awesome. Yeah, that's exactly the reaction I expected you to have. This week was, this was a wild week on the channel. I kind of don't know really what to say. So this past week was the most views for a single video I've ever had, most views in a week I've ever had, gained a handful of new subscribers. So if you're watching for the first time, welcome. I'm tremendously sorry that you're here, because you're going to regret that real fast. But yeah, it was just crazy. I decided to try some different things out with the channel, kind of doing like an opinion piece type video. I touched upon Mario RPG, which we'll get to in the news section. So that went up. Decided to start messing around with the YouTube Shorts stuff. I recorded a handful in the, kind of had them in the can and just kind of uploaded one a day. And a couple of them kind of caught on, it looked like. And I've got more coming up. We'll kind of talk about that towards the end of the show. We do a little bit of, I guess, channel housekeeping and, kind of what's going on over the next couple of weeks. But yeah, it was just crazy. It was pretty cool. And thank you for watching the stuff and interacting and all that. It was, I really can't put it into words. It was pretty nice feeling this week around here. Expect more of the YouTube Shorts. Gonna kind of mix it up. I'm taking clips of videos I already have to maybe draw attention to those videos, get people to check those out, and then kind of doing some, just kind of experimenting with what works. Like I did the Cyberpunk short where it touched upon a news story, and instead of putting that in this show, I decided to put it in the shorts just to kind of see like, hey, would that catch on, like little mini doses of video game news that would maybe filter people back to this show, which is a macro dose of video game news. I don't really know what to call it, but just trying different things out with the channel and kind of seeing where I want to take this. It's if you stuck around for a while, that I've tried a million different things on here, not necessarily like just throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing if it sticks, but just really trying to figure out not so much like what sticks and what works, but what I want to do, and you kind of try a whole bunch of different things to figure out like, oh yeah, no, this feels like what I should be doing with this channel. And I think we're getting there, but let's get into what happened this week in terms of what I played. And honestly, it's going to be a little bit of a down week for what I played because I'm kind of just in my routine right now. Still playing Diablo IV, making my way through that. I decided to completely respec my character. I've been getting some like Diablo IV, build suggestions popping up on my YouTube channel. And I saw one for like an ice sorcerer and I was like, oh, that looks pretty cool. And so I decided to like reset all my, abilities and build that out, but I didn't particularly like the way it played. Went through a couple dungeons with it, went through a couple of the story missions with it, and it was just not really conducive to how I want to play Diablo. So I think I'm going to tear that back down the next time I play and kind of go back to what I was doing. I was doing like a very like lightning based sorcerer. That was my original build. And I think I want to kind of go back to that. I like the way it plays a little bit more kind of fits my personal play style. But I'm still really enjoying the game. It's going to be a game that I kind of pick away at, over time. It's not going to be like Jedi Survivor where I wrapped it up in a couple of weeks, or Hogwarts Legacy where I wrapped it up in a couple of weeks. It's going to be a game that I kind of just, take at my own pace and play throughout the year. Like I'll finish it before the end of the year. Obviously, it's too soon to talk about, right now, but we're what, 5 months away from having to think about game of the year type stuff. Obviously we have, plenty of games still to come out, but, I want to make sure that I have everything wrapped up before the end of the year. So, we can have, I think we're going to have a fun time at game of the year this year. There's a lot of really strong contenders. I was playing a lot of, Diablo 4 this week, but I also tried out some of the Steam Next Fest demos. So every time they've done the Steam Next Fest event, I have downloaded a handful and tried them out. One of which kind of like stuck with me was Tape to Tape. That was in the last one. And then now that game's in early access, so you can just go and pick it up and play it. I streamed a little bit of it probably a couple months ago at this point, if you're interested in checking out what the game looks like. But this time around, I decided to record something. So tomorrow, you'll see a video go up on the channel where I picked out 4 demos that kind of struck my fancy and spent a little bit of time with. They were Little Guardsmen, Toxic Crusaders, Punch Club 2, and Mr. Run and Jump. And not to like give away the whole video tomorrow, but Mr. Run and Jump and Little Guardsmen in particular, I think are the ones that kind of stood out the most for me. I wanted to get like a wide variety of games. Toxic Crusaders is a beat 'em up, much in the style of, your Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles beat 'em up, especially like Shredder's Revenge that came out last year. I think it was solid. It's definitely not as polished as Shredder's Revenge is, but I think it's good. I think it'd be worth a playthrough. And I guess it all depends on like what it costs, because Shredder's Revenge was Game Pass, right? So when that came out on Game Pass, it was a very easy, no financial commitment really outside of the subscription you're already paying for Game Pass to get into that game. And that game ended up being very short. I want to say I played through the entire thing on stream in less than 2 hours or something like that. It like moved. Like, it was not a long experience at all. I imagine Toxic Crusaders is probably going to be along those lines. I don't know if it's a high profile enough game to get onto Game Pass, which is, I don't know, maybe that's a weird thing to say because there are some like very small games that make their way onto Game Pass, but I don't know, we'll see. I don't remember seeing a release date. I honestly don't remember seeing a release date for any of these things. A few of the demos, when you opened them up, it's like, hey, thanks for checking out the demo. We're releasing later this year, but no like firm release date. Or some of them just said like, hey, wish list now, not even giving a year. So I assume probably this year or next year for most of them. Punch Club 2 was, boy, check that out. Check that part of the video out when that comes out tomorrow, because if you played the original, it is nothing like the original. It is like a dystopian, like cyberpunk future nightmare kind of thing. It's really, really strange, to be honest. It's a very odd game. At least from like the look of it. So I would definitely take a look at that. And then, like I said, the 2 standouts were Little Guardsmen. Little Guardsmen is essentially like a very cute version of a Papers, Please. It's people coming up to your medieval gate, and you're choosing to let them pass the gate or not. And you have, you can like interrogate them. There's like some rules posted up that's like, hey, if you see somebody that fits this description, call me on the phone and I'll tell you what you should do. I liked it. I thought it was pretty good. I think I made the comment in the video that I think this is falling under that category that's been popping up. People are calling them cozy games. I'm not quite sure what defines a cozy game. My guess is something like Stardew Valley, maybe? Like something that's like really low stakes, I guess. But I would say that this probably fits that to a degree. And then Mr. Run and Jump might have been the standout out of all of them, even though I really did enjoy Little Guardsmen. It reminds me very much of Terry Kavanagh's VVV that came out some time ago. That is one of my all-time favorite games. There was a point in time where I was playing that game so much and I got so efficient at it, I actually genuinely considered like trying to like competitively speedrun it, because I was kind of like timing myself, and I was like, oh, like I'm certainly nowhere near first place, but it's like maybe I could post a decent time, like so I really like dissected that game back when it first came out and I was really playing. I played that game like pretty hardcore for like 2 years, like pretty obsessively. And it's not that much of a game. It's a small experience. But Mr. Run and Jump, it's a platformer very similar to that. Some of the look is even similar with like just triangles for spikes as obstacles and stuff like that. It's got a really interesting look to it. It's very like neon, like CRT bloom kind of glow to it. They even make like a comment in the game when you see that visual style kind of for the first time. They're like, yeah, everything's like glowing a lot. It really does look like you're staring at an old CRT. It doesn't have like the scan lines, like it doesn't go that far, but I mean, it kind of looks like somebody kind of like rubbed a little bit of Vaseline on your glasses and like crank the color intensity all the way up. It's definitely got a unique look to it. But the gameplay, man, the controls super tight, super crisp. If you want to manipulate that character in a very specific way in the air, you can do it. There's not a lot of barriers preventing you from doing things the way you want to do them as you navigate through each stage. And like VVV, they are somewhat divided into separate screens. It will scroll, it will go on. But it does have sections that are very like kind of cordoned off, and this is your area, you know. But that's definitely a huge recommendation. When that comes out, I will be picking that up and definitely giving it a play. I'm really looking forward to that. And then the only other thing I really played this week is actually kind of an older game. So I think every year, you know, as we play our games, you know, that we're picking up, you know, you can only afford so many games, right? You know, some stuff just gets left by the wayside. You pick it up on sale later on, or maybe these days you wait for it to come to Game Pass. But I think everybody's got games that they're like, oh man, you know, when this came out, I was really looking forward to playing it, and it just kind of got lost in the shuffle. And so I kind of rectified that this week. So I've been waiting for a while now to play the last Need for Speed, which was Unbound, which came out, I think it was November of last year. And it was the game that got criticized, I think very wrongfully so, for its art style. It had a very almost like anime-ish art style, a lot of cell shading. You know, in the cars, you know, you would rev your engine, the smoke cloud coming out from the rear tires would be completely like 2D animation. When you would fly through the air, like 2D, like drawn wings would appear on the sides of the cars. And I thought it looked pretty interesting. You know, I'm a pretty big racing fan historically. I've kind of taken a break from the genre for a while because there's not really anybody making a racing game specifically to my tastes besides Forza Horizon. You can only play so much Forza Horizon. I played a ton of the last Horizon game. So Need for Speed Unbound was definitely on my radar, but I just didn't get a chance to check it out when it came out, but it hit Game Pass this week, so I gave it a download and started playing it, and it is it's really good. It's probably the best Need for Speed I have played since Most Wanted. I think it was Most Wanted. It was whatever one was on the Wii U, which I think in itself was a port of a 360 and PS3 game, I think. I don't think we had PS4 going yet at that point, so I think that's what that was. This Unbound has very much like a structured story mode. You know, it's kind of like a movie. It's kind of like taking things back to like the original Fast and Furious, where it's like street racers and dealing with the cops and all that kind of stuff.
Well-known fact, Dumbo, I was actually up for a role in the original Fast and the Furious. I just missed the cut on the franchise-defining role of pile of stolen DVD players.
Yeah, that tracks definitely. But the story mode is, you know, the writing is not great. The voice acting is actually like pretty okay. I assume there's multiple voice actors because you can play, you know, you can choose a male, female character. And so I assume there's different voice actors for that, but the voice actor that I have for my character is perfectly serviceable. The kind of supporting cast has been fine so far. Just the writing's a little on the weak side, but really kind of what do you expect with a like modern video game street racing take on things, I guess. But it starts off with this kind of interesting section that I don't know if it necessarily prepares you for what the game actually is. So it's a series of races, and you're trying to raise money to buy into these events, and that mechanic definitely carries over once like the main part of the game opens up. But as you go on, you know, like your racing partner kind of double crosses you. She's a coworker where you work at this repair shop, and then you kind of street race at night, right? And it's got that modern Need for Speed mechanic of you race during the day and at night, but the stakes are higher at night. You can make more money racing at night. The cops are more aggressive at night, like that kind of thing. It kind of shoehorns that in, where like almost every single night, like every single race, the cops show up no matter what. So it's a little odd, you know, especially because one of the races wasn't like on the streets where like police would normally be roaming. It was like in, I assume, an abandoned racetrack or just a racetrack they broke into. And it's like, would they really just be sitting there waiting? Like, how would they know? Like that kind of thing. So it was a little disconnect there. But some of the races have some really nice set pieces. big jumps and stuff like that. And, they are incentivizing you to draft behind cars and go into oncoming traffic and your near misses to build your nitrous meter so you can boost and all that stuff. And a lot of car customization, which is interesting because it seems like the most car customization I've seen in a Need for Speed game in a while, but still not as much as like the Underground games did back in like the PS2 and GameCube and Xbox era. I also, obviously, I like cars, but I'm not like a modern car street racing enthusiast by any stretch. But I did not recognize any of the brands in the game. I'm wondering if they're all fake brands, whereas like Need for Speed Underground had real car, part manufacturers in there, real tires and real, spoiler companies and companies that did body kits and all this stuff. So I don't know, maybe they just kind of didn't want to pay for licensing or whatever, which is fine. You don't have to have real parts, but it's just nice to have that like ability to really do a lot of customization with the car. And then the opening chapter ends, like you get double crossed and then it flashes forward 2 years and you're kind of getting back into street racing. And at that point, it really, like the game, like at that point, like really opens up and it's like, okay, here's your goal, here's your objective, here's how you're going to accomplish it, blah, 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 that kind of thing. But it like sets you on this like schedule of like actual days of the week. And it's like some stuff only happens on some days of the week. And, there's not really a lot of street racing happening on a Tuesday during the day, like that kind of thing, which is like fine, but it kind of limits you a little bit and it kind of forces you to do as many races as you can in one kind of go. And the problem with that is the more you race, the more you build this gauge that attracts the cops to you. And if you build it just a little bit, the cops will kind of ignore you if they see you. But if you just build it like one tick on the meter, I think it's like 5 or 6, like little flames or whatever it is that you can build up, they'll like just chase you on sight. And so you get into this predicament of, okay, I've completed this race. And then a lot of times after the race is done, you'll automatically just be launched right into a police chase. So then you finish that, you have to get rid of them somehow. Then now you have to make it to your next race. Well, the cops might see you again. So you just kind of get in this like, there's the potential to get into this like endless cycle of just constantly being chased by the police when all you want to do is just get to the next race and get it over with and progress in the game. And so it's a little like, I get what they were going for, but maybe we could have streamlined this a little bit. I don't know, maybe there's a way later on in the game to kind of like reduce your kind of wanted level for, I can't remember what the actual term is. You can completely get rid of it by going back to a safe house. But if you go back to a safe house, then it ends the night and you can't go back out and compete. And because you're on this like daily schedule, you have to be able to compete on certain days. So you can kind of see where it falls apart a little bit, but I am really, really enjoying the game. I think it drives well. It plays well. It's got a really nice look. I love the art style to it. I know people were criticizing it when it came out, which I don't know, maybe it was just because it was so different. And it led them to say, like, put a thing out saying, like, if you really want to turn all this art stuff off, you can turn it off. And it's like, man, that's like so disrespectful to them, like taking a chance and taking a leap on doing something different with a franchise that's kind of, no pun intended, spinning its wheels for a long, long time now. They have not been able to find their footing and had a breakout Need for Speed game in over a decade now, probably at least. But I'm really glad that they tried something different with it. I really like it. It's on Game Pass now, if you want to check it out. But that pretty much was it for what I played. So we'll be back in just a minute with the news. All right, we are back, and man, we had a loaded week with news, so we'll make it through it together. I guess we'll probably start with the Nintendo Direct. So I talked about this during my Mario RPG video, where I didn't plan on watching it and like covering it like I did with like the Ubisoft Forward and the Xbox Game Showcase and all that stuff, because it didn't necessarily seem like Nintendo was putting the hype behind it. Like, hey, this is our E3 equivalent. This is our big summer, kind of showcase thing. I kind of just thought, because they said like, oh, we're mostly talking about Pikmin, and they've done like those Nintendo Directs before that really only kind of focus on one game. Maybe they announce a couple of things off to the side. So I really thought it was going to be one of those. So I thought like, oh, I'll watch it, that night, on my own time, take some notes, and we'll talk about it on this episode of the show. But then my phone started going off, And I realized it was because they had announced something related to Mario RPG, which is my all-time favorite game. And obviously at that point I needed to kind of stop what I was doing and be like, okay, what are they doing with this game?
I was so happy to see you disappointed in watching your favorite game get twisted by the Nintendo overlords. Your sadness is the lubricant for my being.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. But disappointment, I don't know, Christian, maybe that is the word I would use. I don't know if I'm disappointed because I don't know really what I expected. You know, it's a remake, right? But they're remaking it in an interesting way. They're adding mechanics to the game. And obviously we haven't seen anybody like sit down and play the game. There's just a trailer. And there's no like text write-up like article that's like, here's the new features we're putting in or anything like that. So we've only seen what we've seen through the trailer and the screenshots that have come out. To me, the gameplay in Mario RPG is perfect. The timing-based combat system is absolutely perfect. I've always loved the look of the game. It was designed to look like children's toys, like a dollhouse. You know, it has that isometric view, so it really does kind of give you that illusion of you are looking in on this miniature world that's existing in front of you with these, you know, both new characters and also old favorites, you know, like Princess Peach, Bowser, Mario, Yoshi's in the game, all the Toadstools, all that stuff. But there's all, you know, also all of these Square characters because Square made this game, Nintendo didn't make it. So they're Geno and Mallow and the Mole People and Smithy, which they didn't even touch upon. They didn't even show Smithy, the main villain of the game. They didn't even show him in the trailer. Also omitted from this is they are just calling it Super Mario RPG Remake. The name of the game originally is Super Mario RPG The Legend of the Seven Stars because the stars play into the story. And the main villain is Smithy, a giant sword that impregnates Bowser's castle at the beginning of the game, forcing Bowser to join forces with Mario, which was like a really interesting twist at the time. And, you know, all that. We didn't get any of that. We didn't see really any story stuff in the trailer. I was very surprised that the main villain of the game did not make an appearance in the trailer. I thought that was a little odd. They did show some of the bosses, though. But I don't know. I don't want to rehash what I said in the video. You know, if you really want my honest, like, upfront, at first, you know, first look thoughts, you know, watch that video. I'll just end up repeating myself here, but I am cautiously optimistic about the game. You know, I will probably find a way to check it out one way or another. I don't have a Switch right now. So I'll try and find some way to check it out when it comes out, because I mean, it is my favorite game. I gotta at least try it to some degree. But for the rest of the Nintendo Direct, I'm not gonna go over everything that came out, but just kind of stuff that you know, jumped out at me. Super Mario Brothers Wonder, which is the next 2D Mario like mainline game coming out in October. I thought that looked pretty good. It looks like a total fucking acid trip. It is like they were like, hey, what if we just combine Touch Fuzzy and get Dizzy and Elephants, and let's just put them together, and now Mario's on DMT. And I mean, that's kind of what it looks like, which, hey, you know, I'm into that. You know, I would say that if I had a Switch, I'd probably buy this when it comes out. But man, it is coming out at a tough time. Obviously, Mario is its own thing. They don't really have to worry about competition, but it is coming out the same day as Spider-Man 2, which is only a few days after Alan Wake. And then like City Skyline is coming out. So there are certainly game players out there that are going to be interested in all four of those. And it's like, oh man, like now we're going to spread the dollar out and play games later or whatever. So it's just, you know, it's interesting that October ended up getting so crowded when November is pretty wide open. I'm honestly not surprised that Nintendo didn't see that, like, hey, there's not a lot of stuff coming out in November. Why don't we put our game out closer to when people are starting to get their Christmas presents and all that stuff, and they'll buy the new Mario game. I mean, they'll buy the new Mario game regardless. But it just, I don't know, I guess it seems weird to kind of put it in such a crowded area, not just a crowded month, but like a crowded week and like week and a half seemed a little odd, but I think the game looks really nice. And the next up was they're bringing back Detective Pikachu. I didn't play the first one. I did see the movie. The movie was fine. But I know that there are some people out there that are like super into Detective Pikachu, so I'm sure they're they're pretty happy about that. They announced some amiibos for Tears of the Kingdom, a new WarioWare that looks pretty rough. Didn't look great. Pikmin 4 looked pretty cool. I enjoyed the Pikmin games. I played Pikmin 1 and 2 on the GameCube and thought they were pretty neat. Another one of those games where it's like, if I had a Switch, yeah, I'd probably pick up Pikmin 4 because it looks pretty good. And then they ended up also kind of announcing that coming out immediately after the Direct were HD versions of Pikmin 1 and 2, so that was cool to have. Showed off some Pokemon Scarlet and Violet stuff. I have not been into Pokemon in quite some time. The most recent Pokemon game I played, I guess chronologically would have been X and Y. I did play Let's Go Pikachu on the Switch briefly because the frame rate was horrific and I could not keep playing it. But that was a remake of like Yellow essentially. But the most recent one I played X and Y. I can't remember if it was X or Y. It was whatever one had the deer on the cover was the one that I played. More stuff coming to Mario Kart 8, a port of Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon coming, and I guess the last kind of big thing was they showed off a Princess Peach game. They didn't really give a lot of information, showed up a little gameplay. It looks like a side-scroller, but it looks like a side-scroller and kind of like beat 'em up in a way. Not necessarily like a platformer like a traditional Mario game. Princess Peach has had a couple of solo games in the past. The most recent one was a DS game, which, to be honest, was a little odd, having a game about a woman who can't control her emotions, and that's like the main mechanic in the game. It's, I don't know, maybe a little weird, but yeah, so that's that's coming. And then I'm scrolling through the rest of it. It's a lot of stuff we already knew about, stuff for Splatoon 3, Dance Central, or Just Dance, sorry, not Dance. Dance Central is no longer a thing. They showed a couple of just like trailers of some indie games and stuff like that. They're bringing like the Arkham games, but not Arkham Origins over. I'd be really curious to see how the frame rate is on those. Showed off some, more about Sonic Superstars. We'll touch upon Sonic in a little bit because they had a whole Sonic event, but I think overall is a pretty solid Nintendo Direct. Obviously the marquee titles there, the Mario Wonder and the Mario RPG Remake. I think at this point, as we are getting closer and closer to the end of life for the Switch, I think anybody that's holding out for like the next big Mario 3D game, like the follow-up to Odyssey, that's going to be on the next system. I think they're probably done at this point. I was honestly kind of surprised they did 2 Zeldas on the Switch, but I also, Nintendo might not have realized, at the time, of course, how long the Switch was going to go. The Switch still is a hot seller. It's a big selling console still to this day, years and years and years after it's been out. Obviously, there's been some negativity about that because it is getting very long in the tooth from processing power, what the system can do. And even me, who hasn't had a Switch in a while, so the last Switch games I played are a couple years ago at this point, I would buy, Nintendo obviously knows how to get the most out of their hardware. Like Odyssey running on a Switch is an incredible accomplishment. Something like Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, an incredible accomplishment. But I was really surprised with that Let's Go Pikachu, like how bad that was. I mean, we were talking like single-digit frame rate very early on in the game, and I was just like, I cannot play this game. This game is legitimately unplayable. So I was very surprised that even Nintendo first party stuff was starting to suffer on the system. I know that obviously there's still games coming out that run perfectly fine on it, but there's also games coming out that don't run great on it. So I'll unless they make some really weird radical change, which I don't think they're going to go to or going to do, I would say that I'm probably, I'll pick up whatever Nintendo's next console is, when it comes out. I was a year behind on the Switch. I picked up the Switch. I think it was almost about a year exactly after it came out. Because that first year didn't have a ton that I was super into. But I wanted to get Mario Kart, Mario Odyssey, all that stuff, and, picked it up then. But next up was, so I've not necessarily avoided talking about the whole Microsoft Activision it's an acquisition. It's not because I'm not interested in it or that I don't think it's news. It's just that it's kind of slow moving, and obviously, yes, there are updates coming out about it, but do we really want to talk about it all the time every week? But this week they were actually in court. They had Phil Spencer on the stand in court, and some fairly interesting information came out. I don't think anything that he mentioned or that the other people that took the stand mentioned is like, oh my God, I can't believe that Microsoft is operating like this. Like, unbelievable. If you are logical enough to put the pieces together of how a company works, like none of this stuff was super surprising. But IGN has a really nice article that I'm going to reference here to kind of break stuff down. So we'll start with day one. So I want to say this was on Thursday and Friday, so they've only been there for 2 days on the stand. The first thing is from day one, let's see, the Indiana Jones game from Machine Games was originally going to be released on PS5. The reason why this is important is because PlayStation is fighting this whole thing of like, oh, they're trying to take all of our games away from us by making these things exclusive. It doesn't surprise me that it was going to release on PS5 before Microsoft acquired Bethesda. Why wouldn't it? At that time, they were a multi-platform developer. So it would make sense for that game to come out on every current system. And now it's only going to be on PC and Xbox because they got acquired. I don't see why that's really big news. That's how it works. It's, if Sony acquired a company that was making games for other systems previously, they're going to say like, hey, stop doing that. Hey, Insomniac, Spider-Man's only on PS5. Systems are going to have exclusives. That's like telling Nintendo like, hey, you son of a bitch, put Mario on the PlayStation. Like, it just, I don't know, it seems really, really strange. Microsoft admits on the stand that they lost the console wars. Sure, if you want to still talk about the console wars, yes, they are in third place in market share behind Nintendo and Sony. But I mean, Sony and Nintendo are so ingrained. They've been going so much longer than Nintendo at this, and Microsoft's had a couple of missteps along the way, but they've also had some huge successes. The Xbox 360 was a massive success for them. I think Game Pass has changed the industry, so yes, on paper they have lost the console wars, but I would say right now in June 2023, perhaps the most exciting video game company out there right now is everything under the Xbox umbrella. Between Game Pass, Starfield, the games that they just announced over the course of the past few weeks versus what Sony has announced. And yes, I am biased because I am super excited for Spider-Man, but aside from Spider-Man, what else do they have? Obviously, they have stuff cooking. They're just not ready to show it. But if you look at it right now, I would say Xbox has got the most exciting future in front of them. And so I think that losing the console wars is like, this is something we have to say in court to, dispute PlayStation's claims. All right. They said we expect the next generation of consoles to come out in 2028. That's not surprising. So 2028 would be 8 years. That's pretty on par. I wouldn't be surprised. Let's see here. Let's move on to day two. So day two, this was an interesting one, which doesn't surprise me. Minecraft does not have a PlayStation 5 version because Sony wouldn't send Microsoft dev kits so they could work on it. Kind of not surprising. There was also another quote coming out that we'll talk a little bit later about Sony kind of saying like, hey, if this is going to go through, we are going to continue to withhold things from it, but we'll get into that in a moment. Phil Spencer had to go on the stand and say that Elder Scrolls 6 is 5+ years away and they don't know if it's going to be on PlayStation. I want to use all of my insider video game knowledge as somebody that has no access to the industry, has no connections to anybody in the industry, and has watched, the second half of Law and Order where they're in court. Don't tell anybody that I'm telling you this, but Elder Scrolls 6, that's only going to be on Xbox because they own Bethesda. Shh, don't tell the government. Don't tell Sony. Just watch out. But I mean, this is like, some of this stuff is like absolutely ridiculous. I get they got to like spell a lot of this stuff out in court because the judge and whoever is in there, they're not video game people. They don't really understand this business. They don't really understand this industry. It's just like, it's so weird. There are obviously a few more things that came up, but those were kind of like the highlights of everything. You know, you can go and check IGN's article for a full rundown of everything. And I'm not sure if they're going to continue being on the stand next week. I don't know if Phil Spencer has to continue to testify or not, or if he's done. It didn't say, I didn't see anything in here that they are done talking to him, but this has to wrap up soon. So this deal actually has to close by July 18th, or they have to renegotiate the terms of the deal. Now, I'm sure they would immediately renegotiate the terms of the deal. But I wouldn't be surprised if maybe Microsoft, if they have to renegotiate, say like, hey, you know, Activision's lost a little bit of clout during all of this. Yes, they've had a successful game launch in Diablo IV, but, you know, your name has been dragged through the mud with all the scandals and lawsuits and not riots, but picketing and all that stuff and people going on strike. Maybe we get you for a little bit less money. I don't know. But yeah, you know, it sucks that this is what they have to do, but hey, you know, it's the largest company acquisition in history. It is tens and tens of billions of dollars. It is absolutely, insane. And you know, I don't know. I don't think it's that big of a deal that they get Activision. You know, everything's gonna be owned by 3 companies in the future anyway. So who cares?
Listen, I know a thing or two about being in court. Number 1, never take the first deal. Everyone knows that's the sham deal.
Okay.
Number 2, if you're gonna plead insanity, you need to start peeing your pants before the trial, not during. Judges are wise to that these days. Number 3, it's expected that you lie. No one ever tells the truth of those things. I fully expect Phil Spencer to get off with 3 to 5 in a white-collar resort prison. He'll be back on the streets before you know it.
Phil Spencer, this isn't a criminal trial, dumbass. Okay. He's not going to prison. Phil Spencer's too pretty for prison. He wouldn't do well. But to kind of wrap it up, you know, Sony had a comment about all this, saying that if this deal does go through, they will withhold PlayStation 6 details from Activision if it's acquired by Microsoft, which could theoretically hamper their ability to develop games for the PlayStation console. But the thing with that is, would they even need to at that point? Would they continue to actually be developing stuff that's not Call of Duty for it? And if that's the case, then aren't you shooting yourself in the foot by having a lesser quality version of, according to Sony, the biggest fucking game franchise on earth, Call of Duty? This is what this whole thing is about. Is, you know, they're taking our Call of Duty away from us. We're gonna crumble. This multinational billion-dollar company is going to crumble if people can't get their fucking Mountain Dew skins in COD points on the PlayStation consoles. I don't know. It's so silly. Sony comes across like a petulant little child in all of this, and it's just, I don't get it. Go acquire your own company. You're so worried about this, then you could have put an offer in. I don't know. Like, go buy somebody else. Try and pry Capcom away, which, you know, they're too successful now to sell. Same with Square Enix. They're too successful to sell. Like, I don't know what to tell you, man. Like, Sony's got to knock it off, Sony. Just chill out. Just be cool, man. Just be cool.
Withholding information is one of my kinks. I have an interrogation fetish.
Yeah, we have that in common. I'm surprised it hasn't come up before. All right. So, continuing on with fun Xbox news, Microsoft has announced that they are going to increase the price of the Series X console and Game Pass subscriptions. Now, the console stuff does not affect us here in the United States. It's pretty much most countries except for us in August. Japan, Chile, Brazil, Colombia. Excluding US, Japan, Chile, Brazil, and Colombia. Game Pass will increase in July, excluding Norway, Chile, Denmark, Switzerland, and Saudi Arabia, which means Game Pass is increasing in price here in the United States. So starting on August 1st, the Xbox Series X will cost £479.99 in the UK, €549.99 across most European markets, 649 Canadian dollars, and 800 Australia dollars. The Xbox Series S pricing will not be changing. So Game Pass is going from $10 to $11. Game Pass Ultimate is going from $15 to $17. And then if you just have PC Game Pass, that is staying the same. This is kind of following last August when PlayStation raised the prices of their consoles around the world, some of which went up almost 13%. So it's, yeah, I mean, stuff's getting more expensive. It's kind of weird that, usually traditionally we saw price decreases the longer consoles were out, not price increases. Xbox has also started to push some of their games from $60 to $70. However, with all their first party games, that is kind of inconsequential because they are all released on Game Pass. So you can get them as part of the Game Pass subscription. But I know there are still people out there that buy them outright instead of using Game Pass. It's strange. People are struggling to keep up with paying their bills due to inflation. Companies don't really want to pay. It's tough. And video games, which are a longstanding hobby for a lot of people, are becoming a tougher pill to swallow. When you're thinking about, it's only $10, 60 to 70, but that adds up. If you want to get 2 games a month, that's $140. $140 is, if you're a family, that's groceries for a week. That's, gas plus your water bill or, your electric bill for the month. Like when video games start becoming cost prohibitive, that's not great because the entertainment and the like is going to be the first to be cut. If I'm on a tight budget for a particular month, the first thing I certainly cut is entertainment expenses. I'm not going to spend money on entertainment if I need to spend money on serious bills like keeping the lights on in this place and water running and things like that. That is way more important. If I'm sitting there looking at like, oh, I can take the $70 and buy Skyrim or I don't know, take the $70 and buy this game versus take that $70 and get my dog's food. I'm picking my dog's food every single time, so it's tough and it sucks. I'm not super up on world economy news to know how much this is going to affect people around the world. Not every economy right now is suffering as much as others, It's nice that they're not releasing or upping the price of the consoles in the United States, but it's Game Pass is going up, and there are going to be some people that say like, hey, $2 is too much. I can't do $2. That got to, honestly, it got to me, if they're not getting the value out of it, even though, yes, it's like, it's only $2, just don't buy a cup of coffee for a day. You'll see that argument and stuff like that. But at some point, it's just like, it's not about the fact that it only raised $1 or $2. It's, am I getting $18 worth of value from it every month? Now, if you're downloading like every Game Pass game that comes out, or at least a couple a month, yeah, you probably can justify it. But I went through the same thing with Netflix. I stopped subscribing to Netflix. Netflix got up to like $20-something a month if you wanted the 4K package. And I really sat down and looked and said, okay, well, I'm not really watching any Netflix original shows. The movies that are coming to Netflix, I guess, aren't really worth my time. I think I'm just going to get rid of Netflix, and I got rid of Netflix. Now I get it back these days it's only, I only get it back for a month so I can watch Cobra Kai, and Cobra Kai is going to end with its next season. So I don't know, maybe they have a hot show that picks up or something. I'll go back to it, but it's not so much that like I can't afford the $20-something every month. It's just, it's not worth the $20-something that I have to pay every month. And that's kind of what may happen with some people with Game Pass, because I know some people that just, hey, they just let it ride. Like me, I've had Game Pass since day one. I've never canceled it. Sure, there are times where I don't play anything. There have been times where I didn't turn my Xbox on for 3 months because there was nothing on it that I wanted to play. I continued the subscription because maybe there's something on PC or whatever, but sometimes not. Sometimes there was a couple months went by where I didn't touch anything. Sure, I could have saved myself the money and canceled it, but I don't know. I just didn't think about it. But then there's other times where it's just like, if I'm not using this for a month, I'm going to stop paying for it because what's the point? And everybody kind of, does their business differently, handles their personal finances differently. Some people are fortunate enough to be wealthy enough that they never have to worry about $20 bills, $30 bills from streaming services or subscription services or whatever it is. But that stuff adds up, a bunch, especially if you're doing something like this, like, doing YouTube, you're paying for Adobe Premiere every month, or After Effects every month, Photoshop every month, you're paying for, There's some people that pay licenses for streaming related stuff. It all adds up, and it gets to the point where it's not about how much it is, like the bill. It's just, am I getting my money's worth from it? And, so some people are going to be upset about this, and some people are just going to say, hey, it's time to cut the cord, so to speak, on Game Pass. We'll see what happens. And then EA, this was actually, I was surprised this didn't get a lot of attention this week. Maybe it's because it was inevitable. I certainly didn't see it coming, but EA, Electronic Arts, is cutting itself in half. So EA is changing essentially the way they do business by separating EA Sports and EA Games. EA Games is going to change their name to EA Entertainment. And they're going to just kind of siphon off the business, and it seems like this is a push for EA Entertainment to do more than just video games. So let EA Sports focus on the sports stuff. EA Entertainment will do stuff like the Star Wars games, and they have Immortals of Avium coming out, which actually just got delayed. It's coming out a month later now in August. And that's going to be the kind of thing to be two separate people heading up both sides. So Laura Miele, she was previously the COO of EA, is going to take over as EA President of Entertainment, Technology, and Central Development over at EA Entertainment. It says she's going to work closely with Vince Zampella and other executives. This is from IGN's article on it. And then Cam Weber, who came from the Madden side, he's going to be in charge of EA Sports. Andrew Wilson, who's the CEO of EA, he's going to be everybody's boss, so he's going to continue to oversee everything. So EA Sports is going to essentially be the F1 games, PGA Tour, Super Mega Baseball, which they picked up, Madden, EA Sports FC, which is formerly known as FIFA, the NHL series, and the new college football game coming out. EA Entertainment is going to have Respawn, which makes Apex and the Star Wars games, DICE, Ripple Effect, Ridgeline, which works on Battlefield, Full Circle, which is the skate dev, Motive, which made that Iron Man game, and EA Seattle, BioWare, and the EA Originals label. EA Originals is doing the Immortals of Avium. And they're also going to have all of their mobile game efforts under this banner as well. And I assume it didn't have it in that list, but The Sims has got to be in there. They're definitely not giving up on The Sims. The Sims is currently working on the next version of The Sims. It just didn't happen to be listed in this article. But I mean, yeah, it's EA for, a really long time, for the majority of my life, was a huge, huge deal. They were one of the biggest developers and publishers in the world. And then they kind of just stopped making games for a while besides the sports games. And then the games that they were putting out that weren't sports games, some of them were very successful and some of them weren't. Now, some of them weren't successful because EA kind of pulled the plug or rushed development on it or whatever it may be. And then some of them weren't successful just because they weren't very good games. They have kind of started to right the ship a little bit by going all in on Vince Zampella and Respawn. Respawn did critically acclaimed games in Titanfall 1 and 2, but not financially successful games. Apex has done really well for them, and then the two Jedi games have been phenomenal for them. Jedi Survivor this year was one of the highest selling games of the year so far. So they have really kind of attached their cart to Vince Zampella because Battlefield is struggling hard. The last Battlefield game was a broken mess when it came out. Fans were upset with changes. I'm a longtime Battlefield player. I tried playing it and I just could not deal with it. It was really, really poorly executed. I was not thrilled with it. So they've turned away old fans. They bought up a lot of companies in the late 90s into the 2000s, like Bullfrog, stuff like that. And then they really didn't do anything with those companies and kind of just stopped making those games. Command and Conquer went away. A lot of the Sim games went away, aside from just straight up The Sims. We saw a lot of sports games get revolutionized financially by the whole blind bag, Ultimate Team thing, which makes them a ton of money, makes those games incredibly popular, but, also found them in hot water with courts around the world, with gambling allegations and things like that. They had to backpedal on some of that stuff. EA has definitely had more probably bad press than good press over the past 10 years. I think like I said, I think they are starting to right the ship in a way. I think EA needs to get back to what made EA special in the first place, and that was kind of like big budget games, which they have done to a degree, but they need to do more. I think at this point, EA needs to take a really hard look at their first-person shooter kind of landscape, because it was for so long they're like, well, we got to take down Call of Duty, we've got to compete with Call of Duty, and you just can't. They struck gold with Apex, and Apex has been able to compete with Fortnite and PUBG and other competitors in that space, but they're just not going to be able to take down Call of Duty. You just can't at this point. Call of Duty is just too ingrained. Those games, they've had a few missteps over the past few years, like Cold War, and a lot of people didn't like Vanguard. I actually thought Vanguard wasn't too bad from like an actual like mechanic, like playing the game standpoint. There's some stuff surrounding that game that wasn't great. But you're just not going to take them down. They're just too entrenched. They need to maybe just abandon that stuff and just say, like, maybe we need to start making some original ideas. Yes, it's great that we have the licensed stuff in Star Wars, but maybe we need to kind of like come up with 2-3 big budget games, and over the next decade, we try and get them out, that kind of thing. I'd like to see EA return to prominence, but man, they have done so many missteps over the years that it's like, can you really be that up? Can you really root for them when they've ruined so many things? They destroyed Mass Effect. I mean, destroyed Mass Effect in spectacular fashion. And they almost did the same with Dragon Age. Dragon Age thankfully has still such like a strong cult following that people are actually still very invested and excited for the next entry. With Mass Effect, they've really tried to distance themselves away from some of the mistakes they made by putting out a very solid, remaster trilogy a couple years ago, by really distancing themselves from Mass Effect Andromeda and kind of slowly burning the hype for the next Mass Effect entry in the franchise. I don't know. It's like I said, it is tough to root for them, but you also don't want to see a place like that start to fail, because then people are out of jobs and things like that. There's only so many video game jobs to go around, and it's getting harder and harder for people to stay at one place and feel secure in their position and feel secure that they're going to have a paycheck next week. So yeah, but if this works out for them, then, more power to them. It seems like a smart move, especially if they want to move into non-video game stuff. I guess this gives them the platform to start working on that. So last up was the Sonic the Hedgehog 32nd anniversary showcase, where they announced a ton of Sonic the Hedgehog stuff. Now, I did not get a chance to watch a lot of these trailers, but they're putting out an expanded version of Sonic Origins. They're doing some updates for Sonic Frontiers, which was like the last big Sonic game that came out. That's going to be birthday related. They're putting Sonic into Roblox. They're getting new episodes of the Netflix animated show Sonic Prime. Mobile games coming out. They're putting Sonic songs into Samba de Amigo Party Central. They're going to tour the Sonic Symphony, which actually, are they coming anywhere around here? Because my friend is a huge Sonic fan. No, the closest they're coming is Washington, D.C. I guess the closest they're coming is Toronto or Montreal. I guess, yeah, Montreal or Toronto would be the closest to go. I wouldn't be surprised if he's there. They're going to be doing a ton of merchandise. So they have a toy deal with Jakks Pacific. They actually make some really nice Sonic figures. I picked up a couple over the past couple of years. So they're going to be doing some new stuff for that. And then they kind of wrap things up with Sonic Superstars, which was the game that we saw, I think it was at the Summer Game Fest. So they showed a little bit more footage of that. I thought Sonic Superstars actually looked pretty solid. My biggest problem with Sonic has always been just that loss of momentum from the gameplay side of things. If they can ever find a way to correct that, I'd probably be more willing to jump in and play a Sonic game. And then the last thing is that they're going to continue their partnership with Lego. Sonic had a Lego set 2 years ago, I want to say at this point. It was Green Hill Zone. It was a really nice set. Wasn't very expensive in terms of a Lego set. I think it was like MSRP around $60 to $70. From what I could tell, it sold pretty well. They are doing some more Sonic related stuff. Lego has been doing more video game related sets over the past 3 or 4 years. They've done a partnership with Nintendo. They have the partnership with Lego or with Sonic, and they also did an Atari 2600 set, which was really, really nice. So yeah, I mean, if you're a Sonic fan right now, you got a lot to look forward to. The movies are, I think they're still going to do a third movie because the first two movies made quite a bit of money. So I wouldn't be surprised if they continue that. And also James Marsden's coming hot off the heels of Jury Duty. But yeah, that's gonna, I guess, kind of wrap things up. So let's get into some channel updates and channel, kind of like schedule stuff. All right. So, this week, like I said, tomorrow is going to be that Steam Next Fest, video of me checking out those 4 games. And then the rest of the week, so I mentioned it on the stream last night with Star Trek. So Star Trek Resurgence, I was pretty committed to playing through the whole game. I was very excited and very high on that game after the first hour or so that I played when I streamed it initially. But the quality of the game has pretty much gone straight downhill the further we get into the game. Last night for me, 2 days ago for you guys watching this, I thought that section of gameplay was probably the best we've had so far, but I think it's getting to the point where I think I'm going to stop streaming the game. What I think I'm going to do instead is, because I don't want to just have here's 4 parts of the series that's unfinished on the channel, you can't watch the rest of the game, is I think instead of streaming it, just when I have time, I will record myself playing it and just toss it up and just put everything in a playlist so you can see it. And instead dedicate that time on Saturday night when I can stream to other things. So what's going to be on the streaming docket coming up? So I've kind of taken a break from Street Fighter 6, not because I don't like the game, but because my hands hurt. My little baby hands hurt when I play the game, and it was very difficult to find a PlayStation 5 fight stick or an arcade stick, whatever you want to call it these days. The ones that I could find were several hundreds of dollars. And I reached out to somebody I know who pointed me in the right direction of an adapter called a Wingman that you plug into the PS5 and then plug in your fight stick that you already have that's for a different system, and it will work. Apparently these things were super hot. They were sold out. Some websites were doing pre-orders for a couple months from now, so you would get one, I don't know, end of July, beginning of August, something like that. But I set up a reminder to just, let me know when they come back in stock. And I got the email saying hey, they're back in stock. By the time I got to the website, they were sold out, but they had a list of affiliate websites that were also selling them. And they were all sold out except for Amazon. Amazon at the time, when I clicked on it, said, hey, we have 2 in stock. So I ordered one, and it's coming this week. So once I get some more time in with the arcade stick to adjust, we're going to stream some Street Fighter 6. Probably just go online instead of doing the World Tour mode. We'll just go online and play some matches. I'm sure at this point the game's been out long enough that I'm going to get completely destroyed online, but I want to enjoy the game with an arcade stick and kind of play it as God intended. Beyond that, looks like either Thursday or Friday. I think it actually might be Thursday. The AEW game is coming out. AEW is kind of the competitor to WWE in the wrestling space. They have their video game coming out. This game has been, I can't say it was delayed because they never released once they released a release date, they stuck to it. But, they've been talking about it for so long. I think they kind of just announced it way too early. But it's finally coming out. I think there are some big downsides to this game that people aren't talking about that probably aren't going to come out until the reviews come out. There was, I don't even know if it was a rumor because people have had their hands on this game now. There's streams going constantly of people that got the game early. It seems like if you create a wrestler, you can't then just go play with that wrestler. You have to complete their entire story mode with that wrestler in order to get their statistics good enough that they could be competitive with the existing wrestlers in the game. That sounds like madness. So every time you create a wrestler, and a lot of people create dozens of wrestlers, every time they create a wrestler, they'd have to go through and play this multiple hour-long story mode. People are not going to do that. I also think that I'm pretty sure it was confirmed that sharing wrestlers is not in the game, at least at launch. So WWE games have a whole online marketplace. There's whole Twitter accounts that you can subscribe to that will be oh, here's the next great creator wrestler somebody made, posting screenshots and information and all that stuff, and people do like an amazing work. I don't think that's going to be in the game. But I want to give the game a shot unless the reviews come out and say like, hey, the game is totally busted or something like that. I imagine I'll pick it up. So we'll stream that either Thursday or Friday night. And then, whatever other day is, we'll stream Street Fighter. And then after that, I want to get back into streaming some older stuff. I used to do that quite some time ago. Not necessarily on this channel, but I used to stream on Twitch, do some old arcade games, and I like to get back into doing that. So we'll get some of that up and running over the next couple of weeks. Beyond that, for videos, so got YouTube Shorts coming out. I think the plan is to try and get them out like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or something like that. Like, I want at least like 3 a week put up. We'll see if I can continue to stick to that, but right now I've got at least like 1 came up today, none are coming up, or today for me, Sunday. There won't be any on Monday because this show comes out on Monday, but I think I've got another one planned for like Tuesday already, or scheduled for Tuesday or Wednesday. But there'll be kind of like a steady stream of those. And then probably next week, if I have the time, we'll film the next episode of Full Motion Sickness. I got to figure out what game I want to do. And so you'll have that to look forward to. And then I'm going to start being really kind of knee deep into production on the next animated Perfect Reload video. And, no timetable for that, but that will be on the horizon as well. So yeah, that pretty much wraps everything up, I think. Thank you again for giving me such an amazing week on this channel. A lot of growth, a lot of views, a lot of interaction in the comments. Keep that coming. Let's talk in the comments. Let's rap. You and I. Let's go back and forth. Let's have a good time. Let's build a dank underground pit for us to talk about video games in. So before we go, Christian, anything you want to say?
Please, for the love of God, if you're new here and haven't given up yet, don't encourage this moron any further.
Awesome. Thanks for the support. We'll see you soon.